everybody. So we're going to continue on with our houses today, with the houses in the natal chart. Today we are going to talk about the third house. There's the card for it. And the third house has an affinity for Gemini and air energy. So this house deals a lot with the areas of life that show communication, that deal with communication, that deal with logic and reason. So any sign that rules over the third house cusp would be able to show you kind of how you approach communication, how you approach logic and reason, how you approach logical and rational thought. So for instance, I have Aquarius ruling the third house. I clearly approach communication fucking weird, which is why I did this. But yeah, so it shows kind of how you communicate, how you are inclined to naturally communicate, how you feel most comfortable communicating naturally and thinking, and what you feel comfortable thinking about, where your mind tends to be. So for instance, if you have like Virgo ruling the third house, your mind, your thoughts might be geared more towards, maybe they're more geared towards daily life. Maybe they're more geared towards health. They might be more geared towards health. They might be more, they might be more practical in nature, more analytical in nature. If you have Sagittarius ruling the third house, you might be more inclined to think philosophically, to think in broad terms, maybe a little less on the maybe a little less detail oriented. Of course, all of this, talking about Virgo and Sagittarius ruling the third house, all of this you have to take the whole chart into account. That may not always fit, but those are the ways that you could start to go with that when looking at a chart. This house also deals with siblings, how you handle your sibling relationships, how you handle, perhaps how, are they good, are they bad, or rather, are they challenging or are they easy? Your attitude towards them, with those, just how you handle those relationships. Another thing it represents is, or another area of life that it tends to deal with is early education, and by that I mean everything before college, everything before university would be here. Because on the opposite end of the axis you have the ninth house, which deals with higher education, like university, when you're getting your bachelor's, your master's, doctorates, whatever, that would be there. So the third house can show how you were in early schooling, how you felt about it, how it went for you. Again, using Virgo as an example, perhaps if you have Virgo ruling this house, you were a perfectionist when you were young in school, that was the attitude that you took towards it. Or it could be that you felt like you were criticized quite a bit in early schooling, or something along those lines. So that also deals with this house. Short distance travel. Now, when I say that, it's not necessarily like just around the block or just in your own town or city, though it certainly can be just that. I tend to think of the third house as being more the country where you live versus the ninth house being international. So depending on, where you live, what country you live, right? And I realize the notion of country is really a fourth house thing, but I guess I'm talking about in terms of area. Depending on what country you live in, that might be a really big place. Like the US is pretty big, right? I would still think that anybody that was like a US citizen, the third house would show travel within those borders. Same thing with somebody that was from France. It's a smaller size country, but any travel within the borders of France, I would think, would be found in the third house. It's more localized. Again, though, local, that's a very relative term, depending on where it is, depending on where you live, where you are. But it's generally like an area that's local to you. You could definitely think of it in terms of your own city, your own town that you live, your own state, province, whatever. But I wouldn't exclude areas outside of that are in your country as being part of this too. I would put that in there probably as well. Traveling in those areas. Vehicles, another thing. Cars, things like cars and trains, I would think would also fall here. Motorcycles, anything that's driven more locally. Let's see. Oh, language. It's not just communication, but actual language. Like, the way that you speak, the way that you, not just the way that you communicate, but the actual way that you use your language would fall here in this house. And depending on what sign rules over the house cusp, would give you an idea as to kind of how that language comes out. How you speak, how you write. Even writing is also very much a third house thing. So this house also, it gets it's not, I don't think it's like the nicest way to put this. It gets kind of thought of as the lower mind. I don't think that's like the nicest way that they that they could have put that. But I think they just mean like basic logic, rational reasoning and functioning. Versus, again, the ninth house, which deals with abstract thinking, assimilation of the things that you take in. And all of those things would be ninth house matters. So lower mind is on the card, but I don't, it's in quotes because neither one of us really felt like it was like the nicest, the nicest way to put that. Sharing information, how you feel about sharing information. Somebody, say with Scorpio on the cusp of the third house, might be less inclined to share information. Maybe they're more secretive about it, or something of that nature. That's not universal. None of these examples are universal. It does depend on everything else going on in the chart. These are just some ways you can go with it. But maybe, yeah. Or maybe you're more intense when you share information. Things seem more life or death when you share information. That's the how. That's the how you share. Perhaps you also have a tendency to, before assimilating, when you're taking in stuff from other people, perhaps it feels more extreme or more life and death to you. Life and death, maybe. Another thing, self-promotion could be found here as well. The way that you would do this yourself. Now, it could also be an 11th house thing to a certain extent, because so many people do promote via social media. I'm doing it right now. But in a way, but this is like the self-promotion that you do like in daily life, promoting yourself. It doesn't necessarily have to be in in a direct self-promoting way, but we do promote ourselves in daily life, right? We do. Regardless if we realize we do or not, we do. And the way that we communicate such would be found in this house. And you'd want to look at where the ruler of the third house falls, to give you an idea, the planetary ruler of the third house, to give you an idea of what house the third house bends to. Like, for instance, if you've got the ruler of the third house in the first, communication will need to bend to your sense of self. You will need to communicate in the most authentic way. Whatever is authentic to you, communication will need to be done that way. If the ruler of the third house falls in the second, you might be looking at something like somebody who needs to communicate things of value. They need to communicate, they value communication and probably need to feel valued in turn for it when they do. And of course, any planet falling in the third house will give you an idea of what planetary energy needs to be expressed there. So I don't know, if you've got, say, Mars in the third house, you might be looking at, perhaps you need to communicate. You might have a little bit more of an aggressive style of communicating, a direct style of communicating, or perhaps just an independent style of communicating. Those things need to be communicated. Yeah. So anyway, I think I'm at like 12 minutes, so I'm gonna go. But if you don't already, follow us on Instagram at Let's Fuck with Astrology. I am at Saturn Season Astrology on Instagram. Natalie is at Apaterno Astrology on Instagram. If you're watching this on Instagram, you can find us on YouTube at Let's Fuck with Astrology. And our subreddit, if you want to join us, is our Let's Fuck with Astrology. All right, y'all. I'll see y'all later.